Come down to the Cape, they said. It's lovely, they said. Blue-skied and warm, they said. Well, they lied through their teeth, because I am down in the Cape and it is freezing and grey and grim. And I basically feel like I've moved to Wales. The only difference is I'm surrounded by fabulous wine a little later, great food, as we bring you a very special edition of Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Pick n Pay. Welcome. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the wine drinking world. And welcome to an afternoon where we spend the better part of the hour celebrating the work of the Worldwide Fund for Nature and their relationship with the wine industry, a relationship that grows ever closer, grows ever stronger, and as we will see from not just the fund's Shelley, but also a selection of wine personalities, one that is so important to the way we make the wine that finds its way to our shelves, to our restaurants, for our dining tables at the moment. So a really important evening, one I'm really looking forward to. Just before we jump into it though, a few things to point out, to remind you of. It's not the last you're seeing of us this week, because on Saturday you will find us at the Cape Fine and Rare Wine Auction, formerly the Nederburg Auction, with a very special live broadcast ahead of the auction. It will be live at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Why we thought this was a good idea, I do not know, but I shall crawl out of bed at some ungodly hour on Saturday morning, and at 8 o'clock we will be live with all manner of people, including Charlie, the auctioneer, getting ready for a big day out, and Cathy van Sale is with us, Michael Friedjohn's with us, Neil Groenevold will be with us, basically all the judges, the personalities, the people behind an auction that once again celebrates not just the very best of South African wine today and indeed from years gone by, but also underlines the future of South African wine and the collectible nature of some of our better fare at that. So that is on Saturday. Also coming up next week, there's a rather special dinner, if you're a member of the Pick n Pay Wine Club, that I'll be hosting online with the team from Warwick. I'm not sure if there are any tickets left. They normally sell incredibly quickly, but there is the opportunity to join myself and the Warwick team, JD the winemaker, and some great food for an online night of indulgence. More details on the Dan Really Likes Wine platforms. And also a busy week in terms of some filming. We're doing some really cool stuff for the Souvenir Blanc Association at the moment. And a little earlier today, got to taste the very first glass of the new 2020 vintage of the chocolate block from Buchenholzkloof for an episode. It'll only be out later on this year when that vintage hits South African shelves. That should be round about September. But fascinating to spend some time with Mark Kent, who's got such a wonderful wine story, and to try what has become one of South Africa's most iconic wines. So that is on the horizon. What is on the more immediate horizon, though, is talking to three great wine estates and talking to a wonderful organisation that helps to pull together the thread of conservation within wine. Our wine estates are Waterford, who you'll know well, Merwida, that you'll know well as well, and then Tanagra. And I had to just double check I had my pronunciation right there, because as of yesterday, I hadn't even heard of Tanagra. And I love discovering and finding new wine estates. And also joining us, not for the first time, from the Worldwide Fund for Nature is Shelley Fuller. So guys, a warm welcome, and welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine on this cold Cape evening.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having us all.
It's great to have you all. Great to have some wonderful wine, and thank you all for getting it down to Reuben's ahead of Shelley. What is a really important day? We have many wonderful initiatives that the wine industry is part of, but this one I think strikes a particular chord at the moment, because whenever I'm visiting wine estates, the issue of conservation, of managing the entire wine story with greater environmental sensitivity becomes increasingly apparent to me. Just today, being at Buchenholzkloof and Mark Kent talking about how their process is all now vegan in terms of how they make their wine, looking more closely at elements of it. Biodiversity Day on Saturday. First of all, explain what Biodiversity Day is, and then why it's so important in the context of the wine industry, Shelley.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Thanks very much again. So, yeah, biodiversity is the diversity of biological species. So it's really important to us at World Wildlife Fund. But also, as you say, and it's wonderful to hear, it's becoming more and more important to people, obviously in agriculture. I mean, agriculture is an industry that relies on the soil, on the earth, and on pollinators, which is a critical element of a biological service. So today is, in fact, World Bee Day. So not only on Saturday is it International Biodiversity Day, but today is World Bee Day, which is amazing that we can be hosting this conversation. And yeah, it's trying to raise awareness. It's every day, usually on the 20th, every year on the 20th of May, and it's about raising the awareness of all the different pollinators that provide an essential service to how we live. So we often don't really think about how the food we eat gets on our plates, but 1 in every 3rd mouthful that you eat is thanks to the insect pollinators. So I think it's really important these days. Everything is so viral that you can share the messages like this even more, even faster. And I think just raising awareness on the role of nature and the fact that actually without nature, we wouldn't have clean water, healthy soils, and in fact, oxygen to breathe and many other functions. So that's what we're really trying to do. And it's inspiring to work with these wine farms that are committed to conserving their natural area and also, of course, producing excellent quality wine. So today we'll speak with some of them.
And I think very important, Shelley, to make it so clear that working with wine in a conservationally sensitive, environmentally sensitive manner and making exceptional wine are certainly not mutually exclusive. They're coming together more and more and more. And that leads to the celebration of the 3 wines we are looking at today, because you've given them a rather grand title, but one they are well deserving of, and that is Conservation Champions.
Yes, thank you, Dan. Yeah, and so to be a conservation champion, you basically need to meet some criteria, which shows that you set the standards quite high in terms of your environmental commitments. So you need to be a nature conservation champion, if you have natural area that you're conserving, or a water conservation champion, or an energy conservation champion. So there's 3 categories, and you'll hear different examples this evening. But yeah, what makes it so important is that in the Cape Winelands, where 90% of our wine is grown, there's the Cape Floral Kingdom, which is the global biodiversity hotspot. So these farms are respecting nature and producing excellent quality wine. But it's, as you say, it's done in harmony, and that's why we use the icon of the sugar bird and the protea logo as a symbol on the wine bottles. You can see it there, and that also shows the relationship between nature. The sugar bird pollinates the protea, and the sugar bird and the protea only exist here in the Cape Winelands, where our exceptional vineyards are. And so that's the image of the Cape sugar bird. That's the male. In nature, it's quite unusual, of course, different in the bird species, where the male is the more beautiful species, but he's got his long, iconic tail that makes a swishing sound, like almost a clicking sound when he flies, to attract the female. And we use that logo on the wine bottles, and I encourage your viewers to look out for that logo, either in color on the front of the bottle or black and white embedded in the label of our Conservation Champion farms.
It is an eye-catching one, whether it is in color or in black and white. And more importantly, it has such an important story, because it tells you that the wine brand in question is taking the issue of conservation very seriously, along with the issue of making excellent wine, and bringing those 2 together, which is exactly what they do at Merwida, which is the first farm we shall head over to. It's one I've been to a couple of times. I've always had a great experience. I remember the first time arriving, never been there before. It's a small and not terribly imposing space, and then you get in and you just discover the wine, and you discover rather quickly that you're very glad that you've paid a visit. Lisa, lovely to have you on the show. Merwida for the very first time, and long overdue. Give us a little bit of an introduction to Merwida and the 7 generations that have put together the space that we now happily drink your wine from.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It's really nice to be on your show. We are very much a family-owned company in the Bredekloof. We've been here since 1844, so 7 generations of family grape growing and winemaking. And yeah, we really pride ourselves in making terroir-driven wines without leaving a mark on Mother Nature or on Earth. So we are very much dedicated to the conservation of over 600 hectares of land on our properties, and we are 100% fair trade as well. So with the wine, you know, there's the community and the environment that we look after as well. So yeah, that's us in
Yeah, give me a little bit of a background on a particular area where conservation is quite important to you. The Pup and Kale site, I've got that right, wetland. What is that? Why is that important to you as Merwida? And what role does that play in your particular ecosystem?
Yeah, so like I said, or like you said, it's located in the Breda River Valley, and it's the natural floodplains of the Breda River. And it's about 600 hectares that we've signed over to conservation, and it's the largest, if I'm correct, it's the largest intact and undisturbed wetland left in the Western Cape. So it really is a biodiversity hotspot. If you want to use fancy terminology. And it's a habitat for over 120 plant species, of which the most important ones are the Breda alluvium fynbos. And there are also 7 endangered plant species that we find only in the Pup and Kale's wetland. So it really is a special piece of land, and it's quite impressive in the wintertime, like with the rains we've had today, it just looks like a big lake. So it's quite incredible to see. We've got some kite surfers that fly around there, and some brave guys who are brave enough to go out into the cold. But yeah, it really does play a very important role in the whole Breda River system, as well as it acts as sort of a natural buffer zone to protect the surrounding areas from breakout floods, which obviously happen, as you can see how much it rains in the Cape. Yeah, and my brother mentioned that they recently calculated a carbon, it's actually seen as a carbon sink. So it produces over 96,000 tons of organic carbon. And just to put that into perspective for you, that's about 83 years of the current carbon emissions at Merwida Winery that it's producing every year. So yeah, it's an impressive piece of land, and we've got such fond memories as kids going with my father, and my father going with his grandfather, and running around there looking for all the really pretty flowers and all the endangered species like the kukumakranka and this really tiny miniature Waterford. So it's a really special place, and we're very proud to be looking after it for the future generation of Funnermaders that are still to come.
I can see that pride very clearly, and also a clear reminder that nature is an extraordinary machine, and all the more so when worked with. It allows you to make your terrific wine. We're going to jump into summer wine in a moment. Before we do that, though, let's go to McGregor and find out why on earth a German business consultant and his linguist wife decided 12 years ago to leave the Mosel and to go and find a little corner of South Africa to make wine. Robert Rosenberg, lovely to have you on with the Tanagra brand, and thank you for joining us. What was the motivation in saying goodbye Germany, hello South Africa, and let's make some wine?
Well, thanks for the invitation, first of all, Dan, to be part of that show here. Well, some people call it a little bit crazy or stupid or mad to come here. But obviously, Germany is definitely a wonderful country, in particular the Mosel area, where the Riesling wines that you get there in particular is great. No question about that. But you know, sometimes in life there comes that point where you said, let's do something different. Let's make a change of lifestyle. And in our case, it was even quite a dramatic change in that way, that we had a very good life in Germany, no question about that. There was nothing wrong. But we came here to South Africa since '96 on a regular basis as tourists. And at some point, we discovered that little valley here at McGregor. And then, well, fortunately, also that small farm here was for sale. And then, well, then you have to make some tough decision after a couple of glasses of wines. Let's stay. And here we are since 2009, and very happy where we are.
As you should be. It's a delightful little hamlet. I've spent some time in McGregor on the Abs of Cape Epic, and in fact, I've drunk some wine from McGregor Vineyards, if not from yours. So I know the area, if not your particular wine. And as I said with Merwida, we're going to be trying your wine in a second. But the Conservation Champion, I think you are the newest Conservation Champion, so the latest member of a growing club. Why is this space important to you as somebody producing wine?
Yeah, well, actually, we are the younger. We are just this month became officially member as a Conservation Champion. Actually, we have been with what it was before it was taken over. The management was taken over by the WWF. We have been member of the Biodiversity Wine Initiative organization or initiative for a couple of years, but then there was some restructuring, and then we have not continued that way for some internal reasons. And but anyway, all the efforts what we have done and still do on the farm here. So that we said we're not doing any pesticide spraying. We are linked directly. Our main neighbor here is the Forlikite Nature Reserve, which is run by Cape Nature, which is kind of you can call it a natural extension of our farm, which is very nice for us, obviously, because our farm is such as comparing to the other members here. Obviously, we are one of the smallest farms. Our farm is only 76 hectares in total. But as we are member directly to the conservation area from Cape Nature here, so it's a very nice extension in that way, but still also from the 76 hectares, about more than 50 hectares of that one we put under conservation. And we can, besides, let's say, the general, attitude in that way that you would like to do something for the environment, we even can see it in our wines, or we taste it in our wines, we are quite sure, that we have quite some influence by the feinboards, the Karoo felt, which is surrounded in all our vineyards more or less, which just gives some with specific flavors into our wines, and that our soil structure, also that we are not using pesticides, that we do a lot of mulching, cover crop, and these kind of things, have indeed quite a very positive impact, we believe, in the wines as such, beside the general good feeling that you create for yourself and in obviously for the global environment by being in that kind of biodiversity driven in that way, whatever you do.
I think you speak of an area which increasingly people who are drinking wine are more interested and more concerned about. They want to know that the wine they drink is being made in the right way and is having the right sort of impact on the environment as it gets to their glass eventually. Damien, over at Waterford, a regular visitor to the show, and a warm welcome back. Now, how much has this influenced the Waterford business? You're big, you're established, you've got a global footprint in terms of your wide base of fans right around the world. How have things changed in terms of the Waterford approach, the Waterford perspective to bringing conservation and the environment into the way you guys do business?
Well, actually, conservation has always been a very key and important part of the business. When Jeremy approached Kevin to fund and found Waterford in '98, we managed to put together 3 pieces of land which were made about 120 hectares. And the decision was made at that point that we would leave 50% of that farm to sustainability practices. So it was a decision made about over farming in the area and about how to encourage natural fauna, natural flora, and some predators back into the area. So we've been working at that long term. And if you come to the farm, you'll see that we've taken alien species and reclaimed that wood and used it in roofing. And now, while there's no roofs to build, we compost all of that. So. And we've 120 hectares, of course, about 60 of that is sustainability practices. And throughout the period, David, Kevin, Mark, David the viticulturist, Kevin, our cellar master and managing partner, and Mark, our winemaker, all have shared that same philosophy. They all have the same philosophy, which is we farm with nature for the future, not just with the vines. So it's a very, very key component to our farm. It's a key component to why the communication that we make to when people arrive. So we have dams on the farm with effluent systems and a delta system to purify the water. We have blue water systems, which is a reverse osmosis machine to help purify water and make sparkling and still waters, etc. And ending to the bee story today, we about a year into working at Waterford, I walked into the lab to where Mark works, and there was pots of honey sitting on the lab, and I was like, why have we got honey here? And he said, no, there's a beekeeper that's got and some beehives up on the farm, and he donates some of that honey to us. So for about a year, I think David, Mark, and Kevin were pocket smuggling, is the Scottish term, which means when you're in a classroom eating sweets from your pocket, pocket smuggling the honey for themselves. And so that year they had to share with me. And then I think we donated pots to around the office also. So it's about bringing caracal and porcupine, deer, blue crane back to the farm. We're fortunate enough to have the blue crane hot between us and Frida at the moment. And it's about working with nature. Wine is made in the soil. It's made first in the vineyard. If the soil and the grapes aren't as harmonious as possible, and then you cannot make great world-class wine. It's simple.
Well, a world-class range of wine we have this evening, and it pays tribute to the very principles that Damien has just been touching on. So let's go into the first of those, mostly because I'm now very thirsty. We've had a lot of talk about wine with no drinking of wine, which is anathema to Dan, really likes wine. So let's head back to Merwida and the Sauvignon Blanc that we kick off with this evening. It is the 2020 Merwida Sauvignon Blanc. So there we go. Most importantly, you can see the little sunbird sitting on the of the bottle, and I remember falling head over heels for your Chenin Blanc when I came to visit you for the first time, Lisa. But I've had a fair bit of your Sauvignon Blanc as well since, and it's another wine that is added to my list of Brie de Cliff favourites. Talk us through this particular wine and why it strikes a chord for you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I figured because you know the Chenin, I'll bring something else for you today, just so that you can taste something else. Yeah, so the Sauvignon Blanc is traditionally actually our most popular white in terms of sales, and it's got a bit of a cult following, if I can call it that. But it really is a wine that put us as a brand on the map in terms of producing really, really amazing, award-winning Sauvignon Blanc, which is not what the Brie de Cliff is known for. Like you said, it's mostly Chenin country. So to produce a top 10 Sauvignon Blanc, this one's the same wine, but at 3 different vintages, was in the top 10 for the FMB, and that's an amazing feat for us as a relatively small producer in the local market. So it's a really special wine. We try and keep it away from oxygen as best we can. That's why it's got that jump out of the glass aromatic, which is I think why the customers and our clients come back every year. They don't even taste the new vintage. They're just like, okay, does it taste like last year? Yes, cool. We'll take a box or a case or whatever. So it really is it's a really nice drinking wine. You can definitely have more than one glass. It's not that overly aromatic that it gives you a bit of a headache. But yeah, no, it's something that we've become known for, which is really special. And it's a wine that we're very proud of. Yeah, I hope you like it.
I do indeed. I also like it all the more. I opened this up about half an hour ago. It was pretty much straight out of a fridge. It had been in for a fair while. It's now just got 2 or 3 degrees warmer. It's up so much more, and it's giving me a really lovely expression of a wine that we don't see that much of in the Brie de Cliff, but based on this, maybe we should see a little more. Let's head over to our German import, and he left behind the Riesling of the Mosel, and instead decided to try something else. Now, it's not a wine we see a huge amount of in South Africa. The wine is Colombard, but where I have had it before is actually from the McGregor Vineyards, which are not too far away from Tanagra. The reason, Robert, for choosing Colombard and what you feel gives you the terroir, the McGregor touch to turn Colombard into something special?
Well, actually, to start with, we our focusing on the farm in general is that we are focusing on older vineyards that we have. So as I said, we came here 2009 and we didn't do any new plantings. Instead, what we have done, we really have been focusing on the older wines which have been growing here already. And some of that was the block of Colombard. In the first couple of years, it was only harvested on our side and then delivered for the cooperative for making brandy or distilling wine, whatever. And then at some point we said, hang on, everybody told us Colombard is a boring, not very interesting cultivar, but we very much believed in that one, and we're getting more and more convinced that if you do it in the right way, It is a wonderful wine, or a wonderful Colombar that way. So it is a dry one, as you will maybe have tasted. It's not a semi-sweet, because if you get Colombar bottled in that way, very often it is not in a dry version. It's in a lighter style. It's a kind of semi-dry. Nothing wrong about that, but in general, but ours is a little bit more full-bodied. It's slightly wooded, just 1 month in wood before bottling, to add something a little bit extra to it. And we very much believe in the cultivar, and indeed, as you indicated, at the moment it's getting kind of a more and more, in our opinion, more and more wineries are jumping a little bit on that wagon and saying, hang on, Colombar, we can do something with it. And you can see a few of our colleagues, particularly here in the Robertson area, when we're doing a wonderful Colombar. As Colombar is, interesting wise, the second most planted white cultivar in the country behind Chenin Blanc, but you do not find it very often in the glass in that way. And I think it's a pity. And we are very happy. We have started in 2017 with the first vintage, and that is now the 2020 vintage, and it's getting more and more popular that way with the consumers. But you still have, indeed, you have to introduce it in that way, because it's, as said, everybody knows Chenin, everybody knows Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, but even South Africans, when we talk to South Africans, a lot of South Africans don't know Colombar, I've never heard about it, which is a pity in my opinion.
I'm reminded of the early days of Ken Forrester with his misadventures in Chenin and putting Chenin in oak and being laughed at by everybody else. And there's not quite so much laughter now. And similarly, Chenin seen as being a fairly cheap grade, one that we just use to make in bulk and give people 4-day headaches. Whereas and Colombar also, it's not really seen in that same kind of esteem. But clearly, you believe that this is a grape on the up, and that in your case, a little bit of oak, a little bit of care, add a little bit of depth to the wine, and there's a Colombar story to be told in South Africa.
No, definitely. Also, what our Colombar was or still is very well known, as said, for particular as distilling wine for making brandy, as a main spirit in that way. By the way, we also do some brandy. As you maybe know, we have our own distillery on the farm, and part of the Colombar we still use for making our own brandy, even beside other spirits that we do. But part of the block, actually, we are focusing to make the wine from. Also, in that way, we pruned it back quite strongly, because Colombar is known to be a high yield cultivar. And that is a little bit then in conflict sometimes with the quality of the grapes. For the distilling part, it's fine, no problem about that one. But when you're looking for the kind of the bottled version or the glass version, so we pruned that section of the block strongly back to get the yield down, but getting more concentrated berries on the stalks, which is creating even more flavors, quite fruity in that way, more full-bodied. And well, I think definitely it's a market for that one. So that is it's not a heavy wine. It's 12.5% alcohol. It's not light, but it's for a white wine. I think it's still very drinkable. And well, it's very nice fruit flavors, guava, apricot notes which are coming through, which makes it a very interesting version of white wine.
Yeah, and it's got a nice smooth finish as well. Just sits almost creamily on the palate there. So look out for some Colombar next time you're down at Pick and Pay doing a bit of wine shopping. It's a grape, doesn't get much attention, but maybe deserves slightly more. Amongst those people watching at the moment, from weather I suspect not dissimilar to ours here in the Cape today, Helen Nichol. I'm going to enjoy my wonderful Waterford Grenache Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon all the more now, and I hope to get my hands on the others soon, drinking with a good conscience, because Waterford are looking after the environment. For all of their wines, including their Chardonnay, Damien, I have some of it poured now, the 2018 Chardonnay, and it's always a reminder to me of, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. I lose sense of time in these lockdown and pandemic days, but pretty much my favorite white wine of that year was a 2004 Waterford Chardonnay, which has just held so beautifully and so magnificently and become this wonderfully big, robust soap opera star of a wine that I thoroughly enjoyed drinking all on my own. This is obviously in a far earlier stage, but it's a wine that is definitely more than accessible now, but does have so much room to play with, Damien.
Yeah, agreed. The soils up there are quite deep, and then they've got a subsoil of Hutton or red clay, and so it's tucked away. Actually, one of the key things that we do at the farm is about educating people on wine drives and on walks throughout the farm about the sustainability practices. And as you go up on the wine drive, you pass the composting site where we've taken about 5 alien species out. And every year we plant 100 to 150 WWF approved indigenous species trees. And as you go past there, then you open out across a small bridge and into the Chardonnay vineyards. They sit just below and above a dam, so which means that they're dry farmed and minutely irrigated at the top. And the beauty of that vineyard is there's generally buck that you see, and the buck particularly like the front row of that vineyard. So Kevin, we use dog hair actually to try and protect the rest of the vines, but Kevin has always maintained that he would leave the first row for the buck to enjoy, and then the remaining back behind rows must be kept for making wine. So the wine itself is tucked between also the Stellenbosch and the Helderberg, and so there's a channel of air that comes through that area, which cools the growing period right down, just slows everything much softly produced, and then we are very, very conscious of the picking window in that wine. So the Chardonnay, we're always picking at a level where we retain acidity and we retain terroir typicity. So one way to lose terroir is about increasing alcohols and sugar. So you lose the essence of the minerality that you are driven in through the soils. So so we take that wine, we take it into the vinification areas. We don't allow it to go through mallows. So we want to retain the green acids and apply that with about 18% new wood. The 18 for me is tight at the moment. So there's a lovely green acidity, lemon balm, lemon sort of citrus peel, and then it just opens up into that kind of warm richness. This wine for us is also a fun favorite, but you're right. Longer root systems mean and clever winemaking in terms of hands off and let the vineyards talk often leads to ageability also. So it's about balance.
And on the topic of age, Emile Joubert, I think is busy starting a boy band in Stellenbosch. I saw something on Twitter the other day. One of the oldest Chardonnay vineyards in South Africa, I believe. Is that correct, Emile?
Well, we actually, yes, Emile. We argue, actually. There's an argument over who has got the oldest vineyard in South Africa. We are one of the oldest vineyards in South Africa. It was brought into the country, I believe, in 82. It was found to be the wrong variety in 85. I think it was either Auxerrois or another Burgundian variety quite close to Chardonnay, and then planted in 85. But ours was planted in 88. So Emile's absolutely right. We are one of the oldest planted in the country. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Emile Joubert, thank you for raising that one. Let's go back now to Merwida. Let's leave the white wines behind and jump into some rosé instead. And I'm particularly excited to try this rosé, which I haven't tried yet, because it is made from Pinotage, and at the risk of invoking the wrath of the Pinotage Brigade, which I think I've done once or twice before, it is, I think, one of the best expressions of Pinotage. I'm finding I really enjoy Pinotage translated into the form of rosé. You've got various options with a rosé to make. Lisa, what points you towards using Pinotage to create yours?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we've played around with a couple of varieties. We've had a Merlot, we've had a Cab rosé, and over the years we've just seen that the Pinotage just lends itself really well, like you said, to just producing the most pink spectrum of fruits and aromatics in the wine. So it's really a nice variety to use, especially because we don't have a Pinotage as a red wine. We've only got the Cab and our Barbera. So it's nice that we've got it in as the rosé. So we've still got a little bit of something that's true to South Africa on the menu. And this is actually quite a this wine's getting a bit of a remake for 2021, and we're actually bringing out a whole range that's going to fall under the Parpenkels wine range. So it's going to be 3 wines, and the one is going to be the rosé. So that's getting a beautiful new label with a botanical illustration of one of the plant species that we find in the wetlands. So you guys need to look out for it. It's going to be a really, really pretty label, if I can put it like that, with a pretty wine in it as well. So yeah, I think it really just, this rosé just I know it doesn't look like it today, but it really just reminds me so much of summer. And I always just see a pool with a big umbrella and a nice ice bucket with some Sauvignon Blanc. Some rosé in it. So it's a really nice drinking wine.
There you go. A Freudian slip perhaps there, because it is definitely wine that can be drunk with a couple of ice blocks. But there's a lot more to it, as there is a lot more to rosé as a whole now. I think we'd have to go back too far when rosé was the preserve of far too sweet, luminous pink kind of Barbie doll drink that certainly not something I went out of my way to find. A new wave of rosé hit us a few years ago, where there was a lot more focus on a more elegant style, far less sugar to it, and the colour was a lot paler. This is neither of those. There's almost a copper to this. There's a richness to it, and while it can certainly do a wonderful job on summer, there's also more than enough to this. There's a depth to it. There's a breadth to it to say, this is a great food wine. It's something that's taking those pinotage roots, and although it might sit as rosé, there's a lot you can do with this.
Yeah, I really think you're right. I'm glad that rosé has moved on from, always being sweet and always something that only the Stellenbosch students used to drink in those big bottles. So yeah, it really has become a wine that you can, like you said, you can enjoy with a really nice alfresco style lunch, or take it a bit more seriously as well if you want to pair it with some nice meats or so. So yeah, I really like this wine. I think it's got a beautiful color. And I just see pink and all the really nice red aromatics that pinotage lends itself so well to. So yeah.
It's kind of got that young Julia Roberts hair look to it. Speaking of which, one of her big fans has got a comment. Emile Gibert wanting to know from you, Lise, here's a tough one for you. Why was the 2021 harvest so late in Breda? They were still picking 2 weeks ago. Enlighten us.
I think the harvest was late everywhere. We waited and we waited and we waited. And I think we've only finished picking about 3 weeks ago, and we had a weekend break, and then we had to start with the citrus. So it's been crazy. But yeah, it's looking like a very good harvest, a big harvest, which is worrying for some with the prices and everything. But yeah, we'll see what it brings, Emile.
You've also got some attention from Ariana Sikorski, whose breath seems taken away. Oh, wow, a rosé pinotage. Well, Ariana, it's not the first one I've had, but it's another reminder while I continue to enjoy trying pinotage as rosé. Well worth having a crack if you haven't done so before. Right, let's go back to our great German import. And I'm not sure if he's in the city centre of McGregor or in the suburbs, but somewhere in the greater area. And some Cabernet Franc. I love Cabernet Franc, Robert. It's a grape that is, in the last few years, really started to get more attention on its own in South Africa, as opposed to hiding in the shadows of a blend here or there. You obviously feel likewise that this is one. I see it's got 4 stars from the Platter team. It's got some other accolades. A grape that's really working for you in McGregor.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it. So the Cabernet Franc for me has a little bit in that way, a little bit Cinderella existence so far, because I said it's mainly have been used for this kind of Bordeaux style blendings. But we very much believe the Cabernet Franc on its own is creating a very wonderful wine, a little bit lighter maybe in style, like a Cab Sauvignon in that way. Quite a dry character. So we had it on our farm here as well. We used it at the beginning also for making kind of a Bordeaux blend, but then also we said, hang on, let's make a Cab Franc on its own. And I must say we received it in that way also quite well from the customer side, that people are looking more and more for that one in that way. It's still, as I said, again, not as common as Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or the other main red cultivars in that way. But it's definitely growing, and again, as you indicate, you can see more and more other wineries as well have Cab Franc on its own as a red wine.
A quick question for you on the name before I finish off on the Cab Franc Tanagra. It's not exactly, but it's pretty similar to a Khoisan word, a main shade, if my Khoisan serves me right. Why that name? What's the reason? What's the resonance for that for you?
Yeah, well, actually, if you look, indeed, Tanagra is a combined wording from the Khoisan. You can't see it on our labels. You can see a little bit kind of a drawing. It's a big wild fig tree, which we have here next to our main farmhouse, and that's the name giver for the farm. So Tana and Agra, main shade, well shaded place. So which is obviously that canopy of that huge wild fig tree, which we covered, as said, on the labels, and it's the main landmark, and that's how the farm name is created.
It's a lovely name. It is a lovely story. It's also a lovely one, although it still tastes like it's barely touched down. It is still enormously fresh and enormously young. Not to the extent that I cannot drink it, more to the extent that I'm just going to set it aside and see where it is in a few years' time. But I love seeing more Cabernet Franc in South Africa, because I think it's something we do so well. Now, we also do a lot of very accessible reds particularly well, and that takes us back to Waterford, where if you're feeling a little flush, you can invest the GDP of Belgium in a case of the Waterford Gem, but there are other red blends you can have a lot of fun with, and this is one of them. Give us the Pecan Stream Pebble Hill story. Where is Pecan Stream? Where is Pebble Hill? And what's in my bottle, Damien?
It's not quite as expensive as Belgium. The Pecan Stream Pebble Hill is named. Pecan Stream is named after a river that flows through our vineyards. A stream, essentially, which was, when I arrived at the farm during the drought, was dry. So it was quite interesting to be able to sort of see the bed of that stream, and named Pecan because it was lined by pecan nuts. And the Pebble Hill, the blend has always been, or generally led by Shiraz, and the Pebble Hill is one of our blocks of Shiraz. So it's always been an avenue where we can use wine which doesn't quite make it into the gem to blend and to use into an everyday drinking wine. So when you come onto the farm and you do the walk or you do the drive, we have 3 hours or 4 hours unadulterated time with you to feed you a little bit and look after you with snacks, which we, again, in terms of sustainability, have always used bamboo or compostable goods for now. And you drive through all these 11 different red varietal vineyards. Now, when we were planting, Kevin, in terms of sustainability, allowed the soils to dictate what was planted. So what lives in the kind of the soils that we have. And he looked around the globe, and he went to Italy with Antinori, he went to Napa in California, he saw in Spain, and he saw in the Rhone what varieties work well with the soil, and what ones are working more harmoniously with the soil rather than fighting against it. Which one do we need to use least work to make the wine, because the soils allow it to grow in a natural way. So the Pebble Hill is a blend of those vineyards, not always 11 varietals, but generally it can be about half and half Cab Shiraz. Shiraz heavy normally. I think the 19 is slightly higher in the Cab actually. And the challenge is always to make a wine which is accessible, which has enough tannin to have the red wine drinkers enjoy it and just enjoy the chewiness of that tannin, but enough freshness and fruit profile, not too much tannin, to allow the other people at the table who are not heavy, smack me in the face with a carb tannin lovers, to enjoy an easy, accessible red wine, which is great in front of Igoli or Nuit for Nuit, for instance, as my father-in-law would talk about. So one of the great things that we have to do to ensure that the varietals are healthy and looking after it is, again, going back to soil, look after the soil. So in terms of cover crops, and so we cycle various different cover crop, so turn up to legume to grasses, and then cyclically trying to reinvest nutrients back into the soil to ensure that 11 different varietals can continue to grow harmoniously and produce this, for us, everyday wonderful wine, which does incredibly well during COVID. That and the Kevin Arnold Shiraz were stars. So really, really good.
I love the little burst of Afrikaans there. The accent is coming on beautifully, Damien. I want to link to a point. I was chatting to Mark Kent earlier on today, and he was speaking about the relationship between their chocolate block and their wolf trap, and how often in South Africa we kind of think of second label, kind of downgrade it. It's got that secondary citizen status, whereas he sees it, and I don't think wrongly, he sees it as more we're feeding or declassifying some of the wine from the upper echelon that's lifting up the wine below. And so I think that's exactly what your gem is doing. It's going down to the Pebble Hill and lifting that blend up to something that's far more accessible at the price point. Not quite the same wine as the gem, certainly, but taking it to a space where you're getting real value for money and a look in the direction of the wine that sits up at the very top.
Absolutely, it's exactly right. Mark's on the money with that one. Yeah, really, we cannot create a wine with nature that has a consistency of excellence. You know, at some point we have to realize that that some of those grapes cannot make the gem. They can't go into the gem. Well, where must they go? So we must declassify those grapes. We must then use those varietals in things like the Pebble Hill, or sometimes we'll declassify a little bit of the Cabernet Franc, which would make it into the gem, and that would be used then in perhaps Cabernet to supplement that estate wine that we produce also. So yeah, he's absolutely right. You never get all the grapes to perform 110% every single year. So what do you do with the ones that perform at 90%, you know, or 99%, or Mark may say 109%?
One final one for you, Damien. Just coming back to Biodiversity Day, coming back to the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Just in 30 seconds, why it is so important for you going forward to not just be part of this program, but to keep championing the work that it does, that you are in turn such an important part of.
So I think I'll go back to the original point. You cannot put a vine in an area where it is an alien also species, as many crops are, and grow them in as harmonious a possible way without looking after the soils as well, and without reinvesting back into the land and reinvesting back into pollinators and back into the predators to allow foal or mice or those kind of things to really do what they do best. You know, we have snakes on the farm, etc. I haven't seen one. I'd love to. I've been here 4 years and I've escaped them. But they have, everything has a purpose on the farm. Everything has a reason for being there, and that's why nature is so beautiful. And we cannot work to produce some of the most globally renowned wines without being conscious of that situation.
And you clearly are, and clearly doing such an important job. Let's ask the same question of Robert in closing with Tanagra. Going forward, it's obviously at the heart of your philosophy and something you're just going to keep pushing, keep entrenching in the way you make wine.
No, definitely. So we said earlier that we are very happy and excited to be part of that exclusive team here, and definitely we have really a couple of goals that we would like to fulfill. From the biodiversity point, so that we are, as I said, getting more this kind of cover cropping. We're even using in the winter season, we're getting sheep into the vineyards for grazing the wheat even. And that way we have a kind of a special block, so-called bunkie block that we even imported from Europe now, so to create a kind of a mulching structure on the bunkies, avoiding in that way more kind of, let's say, wheat on that side. I said we're looking forward very much, even intensively, to cooperate or even with our neighbors here, Cape Nature, where we have also we have also guest accommodation on the farm. So for tourism, where people can have obviously a nice farm feeling, but also then walking, hiking, mountain biking into the nature reserve as well. And that is kind of a win-win situation for all people involved. So obviously for the nature as such, for Cape Nature, but also for us, everybody, end of the day, even commercially, obviously, we have to look at that one to offer our consumers something special, something unique, obviously top quality, but also where the people get a feeling that how it is made in that way is the right approach for everybody. And people really can enjoy those wines then with a very good feeling.
I love that idea of the win-win situation, which it really is. Lisa, closing up on the wine estates before we jump back to Shelley. The wetland story is part of a broader story of how you guys have embraced your environment, why you want to protect it. You've been given this mantle of Conservation Champions by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which I guess says to you, well, we've been recognized as such. We've got to make sure that we uphold those standards, we keep applying them, and we make sure that we keep doing what we're doing and perhaps do even more.
Exactly, Dan. And, the Vandermerwe family, we've been connected to this wetland for over 200 years. So I wouldn't want to be the generation to mess that up. And yeah, I think it's really important to not just think about now. And I think very often people lose focus and they just want to grow as a business and plant more vineyards and just use up all the land. And I mean, we're a fairly big setup. We've got over 800 hectares of vineyards. So it's really important for my father and for my uncle to leave something for the generations to come, and something that they are incredibly proud of. And it's something that they've instilled in the generations that are taking over now as well, which is really, it's something very special. So I hope one day I can show my kids the wetlands and they can show their kids the wetlands. So it would be very selfish of us to not look after it. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the foresight, Lisa. I love the commitment. I love what you're doing, as does the great Emile Joubert. He sums it up very nicely there. The Conservation Champions and the connection with the WWF is a sustainability project any other country will give its eye fangs to have. Marketed correctly, it can place South Africa way ahead in terms of wine produced in tandem with nature. And I think that is so important. It is the right thing to do, but it's the right thing to do business-wise as much as it is in terms of conservation. The fact that those two come together makes it such a compelling story. Shelley, in closing, I could ask you to kind of thank everybody or to say how wonderful this is in terms of how it speaks to what the WWF is doing. But I'd like to do something slightly different. It's your second time on the show. I know how passionate you are about this space. I know what it means to you personally, let alone in your role with the WWF. How much does it mean to you when you see estate brands like Merwida, like Tanagra, like Waterford, going out of their way through people like the guests we've had this evening to really not just buy into your vision, but to make it part of their vision as well?
Oh, absolutely, Dan. It brings almost tears to my eyes. It's inspiring every day to work with individuals like this, because that's what a champion is. It's somebody who believes in what they're doing. And we couldn't do what we do without farms like this and without partners like this. So I always believe that it's so much more powerful to hear from our partners, so from the wine farms that are taking their commitments so seriously. And especially through tough times, you know, the industry is struggling out of lockdown and the implications of a lack of sales. And even still, we have more and more farms seeing the value of nature and our services that we can provide to them. And even more so also the marketing angle, you know, making sure that those conscious consumers are able to purchase their wine and to stay loyal to that brand over and above the quality inside the bottle, but because it's actually done in a way that's improving the soil and not harmful to the environment. And so that's why it's a wonderful opportunity to just showcase. I mean, tonight we spoke to 3, and I was totally inspired with each one of their commitments and what they had to say. And we work with 45 farms, and we're growing. And so it's an exciting time for us. And I think allowing us to show some of the examples tonight, and as we feed into Biodiversity Day on Saturday, where the theme is that we're all part of the solution. And I think that's also an important message I wanted to leave with, that, you know, make your purchases count, speak to the farmers that are making what you bring into your home, and support those that are doing the right thing, and that will make a big difference. So thanks, Dan, for your opportunity you've given us.
It's an enormous pleasure. It's lovely to see the commitment that our wine estates have to creating wine that speaks to its terroir, to its environment, and just ensures that that wine story is something that keeps everybody happy and that makes the world a better place at the end of the day, very happily so. So from Merwida through to Tanagra, through to Waterford, underscored by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, a really special day. Biodiversity Day is on Saturday. Keep a lookout, have a look out for that Sugarbird logo, the Protea logo, see the estates who are part of this particular initiative, and see estates who really are doing their bit to be part of a more environmentally and conservatively friendly solution to creating great wines. Shelley, Lisa, Damien, Robert, thank you all so much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. The wine is lovely, and the fact that it is all made with such respect for and care for the environment means I think I've lost 5 years this evening. I'm feeling full of great karma, and I'm going to have a great evening ahead. So thank you all very much, and I really appreciate you being part of the show this evening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you,
Yes.
everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
So, from the Breda Club and from the Heart of McGregor and, technically Stellenbosch, although Damien's in an 800 square foot hotel suite somewhere in Johannesburg at the moment. No, he's not really. I think he's in about a 10 square foot hotel suite that joined us this evening. Thank you to all of you, not just for being part of the show, but for your commitment to and the example that you set for the wine industry in terms of environmental awareness. It's a story that is only getting more important, and it's one that I think consumers like you and me, if you're out there watching, are now not just aware of, but we are taking into account when we are buying wine, and that is exactly as it should be. And that brings us to an end of a very special show from Reuben's in Franschhoek. I'm going to be joining a couple of friends, Linton from Buchenhartskloof and Big Rob from Hotel Spa for dinner here at Reuben's with Reuben himself. He does exist. He's a wonderful guy, and he's a regular guest of and friend of the Dan Really Likes Wine show. Throwing forward to next week, we'll be spending some time with a number of wine brands as always, and included in next week's lineup, Thursday is International Chardonnay Day. Look out not just for some great Chardonnay from, amongst others, Hamilton Russell, Paul Kluver, Bartony and De Wetshoff. We've also got a great competition. You could be swimming in Chardonnay in a couple of weeks' time if you're part of that competition. Thank you so much for watching the show. Look out for us on Saturday with a live broadcast from the Cape Fine and Rare Wine Auction. There's a 200-year-old bottle of Grand Constance. If I bid for that, my wife will never speak to me again, but somebody else will, and will make a great purchase. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Great to see, in particular, Emile Gilbert with us on the show tonight, one of the doyens of the South African wine industry. And we'll see you live at the Rupert Museum for the auction on Saturday, and back again for another live show on Monday night. Have a great weekend from a freezing Franschhoek here at Reuben's restaurant. Have a great evening. Cheers.